Well, Guy, it's an absolute pleasure chatting with you. And as a classic rock podcast, the best place to start is Madonna. As you do. I want to start with the beginning. I mean, I heard you tell a story once where you said one of the very first things she said to you, I think it was a phone call at like 4 a.m. or something, was, "I hear you're funny, make me laugh." I mean, what was going on?
I hear you're funny, make me laugh. Yeah, she did. That's true. That's absolutely true. Because it was at the end of that first insane 13-month Pink Floyd campaign, really wasn't at all. And it was right at the end of it, Pat Leonard had come to a show, who was my friend from before Pink Floyd, who I'd met through Bryan Ferry, who was, of course, Madonna's writer and producer. And he just said, "What are you doing after this?" And I was like, I had no conception of any sort of life or anything after. I assumed I was just going to die. Also, I mean, I really was so completely, I bubbled, so to speak, and not in a great way, to be honest. But and I said, "Well, I don't know why." He said, "Well, how do you fancy playing on the next Madonna record?" I was like, "Oh my God, that sounds amazing." So I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." Because bear in mind, she'd never used bass players before then. Even on the Nile Rodgers one, I think Bernard might have played on one song, but it's all synth. So she'd never had a bass player. True Blue, did True Blue? No, I think True Blue was all keyboard. I probably should have researched that before I said that. So yeah, the tour ended. I went home, blah, blah, blah. Then we started arranging it. And then he said to me, "Who do you want to play drums?" I was like, "Fucking hell, man." So sorry, can I swear?
Yes, go for it.
Like, oh my God, I get to pick my own drummer. So I picked this mate of mine, who has a habit of doing this, it turns out, though not for the last 30 years. He's been in a very regular gig. And she'd agreed all that. And so I had this section, we were going to go out, and then he blew it out like a week before we were going out. And apparently Madonna just lost her mind. She was like, "Well, why are we getting this fucking guy? He can't even get a drummer this time." Yeah, well, and so I was out, and there was, I remember Pat calling me to tell me, and I was like, "Mate, please, you can't." He goes, "I know how important it is with the nursery, the telling, the profile, the level of this album." I went, no, never mind all that. I've told everyone.
I'm going to be on with Madonna.
Yeah, exactly. So, but then, and bless him, to his credit, apparently the person I have to thank, really, forget me, that is Nick Kamen, who I knew. I'd done some TVs with, and I knew obviously his brother Chester was one of my best friends in the world, who I'd been playing with. He's an amazing guitar player. Toured with me with David Gilmour, in fact, years later, and we worked with Bryan Ferry. But Nick was out in LA, and she was currently walking down Malibu Beach in a foul mood, and she bumped into Nick in the morning. And he went, "Yeah, do you know who this Guy Pratt is?" And I went, "Oh, Guy, yeah, he's lovely. Yeah, no, Guy's great." So that was it. So I was back in the picture. But frankly, the next thing I got was this phone call, and it was the first words she ever spoke to me.
Wow.
She went, "I hear funny, make me laugh." I love the idea that this is the funny thing is, think about it, that Pat's last ditch attempt at getting me on the album is, "But he's really funny."
And can you remember what you actually said to her? What did you do?
No idea what I said. No idea what I said.
Ouch. So obviously your time with Madonna.
It goes back to, when I was at school, backed up against the wall by a bully, you come up with something. Yeah. So
whatever it was, it obviously worked. It obviously worked. And as you said, working with Madonna, it wasn't just any Madonna album and any Madonna material. I mean, Like a Prayer, it was one of the biggest songs of the 80s. It was a defining song as well. It was a barrier pushing song in terms of the video and things like that as well. And you played on that, and it wasn't as if you were just a background bass player. I mean, the bass lines on that song really shine through, don't they?
I know, it's amazing, and I still can't believe. In fact, yeah, I would say that was like her. That was the album where she sort of grew up and became a serious artist. It's, the Divorce album, as it's known. That's when she kind of did the George Michael, kind of really, what I mean, went to the next stage, and it was amazing, and it also because it had all these amazing musicians on it, and the songs were incredible, like fantastically complex songs, a lot of them, and yeah, Like a Prayer. Like I said, I still have very vague memories of it, but it was the very fact. I'm pretty sure that whatever I did, when I did what I did, that I was just mucking about. I'm sure it was one of those, "Okay, we've got it now, let's do one, just go nuts," and I clearly did. And somehow it stayed on the album.
Incredible. So, what was she like to work with then in the studio? I mean, was she hands-on? Was she very proactive when
very,
it comes
very
to
hands-on, amazing, incredibly impressive, very, very professional, incredible ears. Like I used to say when we did, because it was cut live, everything apart from Like a Prayer, everything was just cut live with the band.
Wow.
It was, I mean, the band, this is what amazing. It's like, why were they asking me for a drummer? We had Sugarfoot Moffat. I mean, come on. And the band was amazing. The band was Bruce Gates on guitar, Jay Winding on keyboards, and Pat on keyboards. And she would, like when we did Oh Father, we were just given the chart. We all sat down, we played through it. She sang it in the control room. And even though she'd been singing it, she then went around the whole band and gave everyone notes, and like really good notes.
Wow.
You know, I remember her saying to me, "Guy, just duck eggs. Except that one fill at the end. I like that. Keep that." And so, and you know, all her, you know, Jay, no bells till the second chorus. Like really, you know, like a producer.
Wow, that's quite incredible.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, no, she's, you know, she's Madonna for a reason.
Absolutely, and one of the biggest stars in the world, and for a reason as well. But another huge star in the world. I mean, he obviously heard this song, and he asked you to come and play on his music as well. Michael Jackson. I mean, how did all that kind of work in your head?
It was. I mean, it was an insane. It really was an insane period in my life. I just wish I'd been a bit more present, because I'd been on this roller coaster for a couple of years. I was kind of, frankly, I was off my head off the time. And I was in LA, and I was doing this. I'd become this sort of top session dog, which was never what I wanted to do. I don't, you know, obviously I wasn't going to say no, but it was just felt like a weird. I mean, I had unbelievable imposter syndrome, because, you know, I'm a bandy type. I can't read music. I don't go to fucking Berkeley or, you know, and I was literally just forever stuck in rooms with people who played on Steely Dan records, and it was just like, we're doing it. You know, I mean, kind of the only thing I had going for me was I was definitely the best dressed person.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was, and so yeah, so this got to the point where I went and did the Madonna record, came home, then went back to LA. I did the Toy Matinee project, which is still one of the things I'm most proud of in my life, which was produced by Bill Bottrell, who'd engineered the Madonna album, who's just the insane, amazing maverick, and was behind Sheryl Crow and all sorts of, I mean, and worked with Jeff Lynne a lot, and then Michael Jackson, in fact. So, yeah, I went back and did this Toy Matinee project with him, which was Pat Leonard's sort of baby. And then I had to leave that before it finished to go back on tour with Pink Floyd, where we went to Russia and we played Venice. And then from that, I had to come straight back to LA to start Robbie Robertson's album.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it was nuts. It was nuts. And then I'm like a few weeks into Robbie's records, and I get a call one day from Bill Bottrell, and he goes, "Hey, Guy, do you want to come and play on a Michael Jackson session?" It's like, what? He goes, "Yeah, you need to be here by 6." I was like, "Well, we don't really finish till about 7." So I said, "Well, I'll ask Robbie." And it was just this fun having to go to Robbie Robertson and go, "Robbie, listen, mate, is there any chance I could get off early tonight? Because I've got a Michael Jackson session." And he just went, "What am I supposed to say to that?"
Exactly.
So, and again, those sessions were just me and Bill in the studio,
Okay.
and his MD, but who wasn't someone whose name I can't remember, because it wasn't Greg Fillinganes, who's my mate, and it wasn't another guy. So, and it was just weird, because it would be just us, and there was this track, and apparently Michael had heard Like a Prayer, and so I was just, they said he wants that vibe, so I'd assumed, right, so I had my Red Spectre, had my octave pedal, and I thought I was all ready I was ready. God, this is gonna be Michael Jackson. It's gonna be some stomping groove.
Yeah,
it's gonna be
funky,
like fucking Don't Stop Till You Get Enough Part 2, and I'm gonna be all over it like a cheap suit. And and I got there, and of course it's this, what about sunlight? What about trees? It's like, what? And so I came up with that line, which is quite funny, in the fullness of time, which is, it's the complete opposite. I mean, it couldn't be simpler. I mean, it's basically a slowed down Smoke on the Water. And but Michael wasn't there. And I was asked to come back, and so I came back the next day. They said Michael would be there. Went back, Michael wasn't there, and so I put down some more things. And then this happened about 3 times. I kept coming back. They said Michael would be there, and then Michael never was there. And eventually I went, look, Michael would just be here. Tell me what he wants. I'll do it. We can all go home. And so I get a call next day from Bill. Guy, Michael's in the studio. He's not leaving. Right, rush down the studio. And Michael's just left. But it was very weird. It was very different in the studio. There was this sort of massive Samoan bloke.
Oh.
Someone would be, I don't know, like better suited to being, I don't know, a bodyguard, perhaps. And he was down one end of the desk, and he wouldn't let me get down there. Because this was back when you could smoke in studios. I think I was trying to get an ashtray. It kept blocking my way. I was like, all right. So I did a pass at it. And then this guy sort of leans over to the side of the desk. And is sort of nodding, and he comes back and goes, yeah, I think Michael would find that appropriate. Like, what? That's weird. It's like this guy who can hardly speak English, but he's obviously somehow understands exactly what Michael would require from a bass performance. So and then it becomes very apparent, of course, this guy is talking to someone who's hiding behind the mixing desk, and it's Michael Jackson. He's hiding behind the mixing desk. Yeah. So to this day, I never met him.
Wow.
He was in
that
the
is
room.
very, very bizarre.
But there was a lot of that. Michael was going through a period of hiding from people at that time. I mean, there's a rather unkind rumor that I heard that someone said who had been working on the session said, well, things because he was having so much work done at the time. Interesting little sidebar here. There Spy magazine, which was an American sort of very sophisticated humor magazine in the 80s. They did a thing where they got an FBI facial reconstruction expert, because the FBI have these guys because loads of criminals, so they have their faces rebuilt if you're on the run, so that they just completely transform their appearance, so they don't have to hide all the time. And these guys can sort of see who someone is, and so they just showed him Michael Jackson from the beginning with all the work he was doing. They said, so where's this guy going with this? They went, Ramesses II. And apparently he just had some really extensive work done, and he had a flap of skin hanging off. God. Yeah, hanging down under his eye. And apparently when he danced, which he liked to do in the studio, people would just throw up.
No.
So that hasn't been verified.
Yeah, allegedly,
yeah. Some people say, yeah.
Yes, that's it. Oh, wonderful stuff. Again, on Vintage Rock Pod, we like to hear the stories behind certain bands and people that you've crossed paths with, and something fairly early on was the Smiths. I mean, before they were supposed to go to the States, Andy Rourke, who we sadly lost very recently as well.
Yeah, very sad. Very sad.
Indeed. He was arrested for drugs, and they didn't think he was going to be able to get there with all the rules and everything about getting into America and stuff like that. And you were hired, weren't you? You were called up to almost take his place for this tour, but it never actually went ahead. You never actually went over there, did you?
No, it went ahead, and kind of in the fullness of time, I've got a feeling. I don't think I ever really. I mean, I was an absolute last resort failsafe, but I don't think it was ever really on the cards. I think this was more about keeping Johnny happy, because Johnny Marr and I were in the middle of this kind of mad bromance, having the time of our lives together, running around towns, playing on loads of records. It was just the best. And there was a thing of, and I think that's what it was. I don't think Morrissey ever entertained the idea of me doing it, or anyone else ever doing it. And I'm really glad I didn't, because I would have just stuck out like a sore thumb. I don't think that was Andy's gig, and it was just a wonderful, wonderful week. I drive past the place every time because I live down in Sussex now.
Okay.
And it was a place called Stanbridge Farm, which is near Gatwick.
Yep.
And it was this beautiful old, it might be Elizabethan or something, beautiful old Tudor farmhouse, and it just had this barn attached to it, which was a rehearsal room, and it was a big thing. People go and rehearse there for weeks. And then, unfortunately, I think it might have closed because the road got widened a few years back, which is a shame. So, which meant that that farm was right next to the road. So I don't know what it's become now, but I drive past it once, a couple of times a week. So it's always there, fondly in my memory. because they were just lovely. There was, you know, and it was interesting because this at the time, because they were huge at the time.
Yeah.
Huge, you know, well, I mean, what was funny was of course they still had that air where you thought of them in terms of an indie band, you know,
Yeah.
but they were an enormous pop stars. I mean, and of course there were red tops, there were paparazzi hiding in the grounds and stuff, trying to, because they had this drug bust called, and like Boy George had just been busted for, there'd been a big thing with him, and so he was sending messages of support. You know, it's like, oh my god, we're in that world, you know. and then so we and yeah, I said, and it was Andy showing me his parts, and Smith's songs and Andy's parts are really a lot more complicated than you think. The way Johnny writes is fantastic. Like, right, there's this intro which never happens again, and then there's like this thing that's like the chorus, but it's not. It's more of like a second intro, and then you got the verse, right? But it only happens on the first verse this time, and then there's like the bridge. But again, but this is the bridge. It's the same as the third bridge, but they're not the second bridge. And then you get to the chorus. But obviously, this chorus is slightly different to the other choruses. Then there's a second verse, which isn't quite the first verse. And they're, I mean, amazingly crafted pieces. And, you know, and Andy's lines were pretty, he had a lovely melodic thing. So, yeah, and we had a week doing that. And of course, yes, of course, I'm a sober man now. So this is quite shameful. But on the last night, we just got completely off our nuts. And we had a game of football. I think we were all on acid and all sorts. And when I was writing my book, I sent this story to Johnny just to say, mate, are you okay with me putting this in? And he went, yeah, Guy, it's fine. There's just one thing you got wrong. We did have the football match, and I think you were both referee and manager. But anyway, the story is, it was about 9 o'clock in the morning, and I went to bed, and I was lying there. And I thought, I haven't finished. So I went and started banging on what I thought was Johnny's door. Johnny, you can't wake up. Oh, sorry, that was probably too much. Johnny, wake up, bastard! Oh, God, and then of course it was Morris's room.
Oh no,
Morrissey would have gone to bed straight after Dan's army. So he just got up, went and got the train, went back to London, and that was it. And then I went back to London, and then I just didn't hear anything.
Game over.
Yeah.
You mentioned your bromance there with Johnny Marr. I mean, obviously he's such an influential guitarist, his style very unique and all that sort of stuff. I mean, what was he like to play with on various things, and what was he like as a person to be around at that time? Because it was really exciting time.
A really exciting time. Because it was only because with Bryan Ferry, Brian had this great idea of there's Money Changes Everything, which is the B-side to Big Mouth Strikes Again, and is an instrumental. And Brian or someone else had the idea of Brian writing a song over that and putting it out, which was genius, because then that's Brian's way of tapping into, as I said, those lonely tear-stained bed sits. And we did it, and for some reason, and we were just having trouble getting the track. And it was Brian who said, why don't we get the guy I play it? Why don't we get Johnny Marr in? And I was all like, I mean, I didn't really rate them, you know, I didn't, because it's that thing with this. It's the same. This has happened to loads of people I've introduced them over the years, where on the surface, you know, a lot of people just hear Morrissey. They hear Morrissey and you like it, you don't like it, you know, whatever. And it's and an awful lot of people are like, well, I love what he's saying. I can't really, you know, not really love it. And you don't really, and you have to get past that, get past whatever the opinion is of that, even if it's good, before you really kind of pay attention, you know. And so Johnny turned up at the studio to play the song, and it was like, and I was probably being like, yeah, whatevs. And you know, we're all very, very young. I mean, I'm only 23 at this point, 20, you know, and so it's like, you know, arseholes basically. And I know this thing I'll never forget of, he just plugged his guitar in, and and I was probably reading a paper, and the second he started, I remember I was on my feet, so was Chester, just ran over there to go, where's the other guy? Where is the other guy? Do you know what I mean? Because it was just two people playing a guitar, and it was just you know, amazing. Because I was saying because Johnny is very much, he's like the other side of the same coin of David Gilmour, in that they both have that same thing of they're an orchestra.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
In fact, that is still one of my proudest ever achievements. Is there's a song on the album Kite by Kirsty MacColl. Thanks to me, the guitar credit is David Gilmour and Johnny Marr.
Wow, there you go.
Yeah. So yeah, and again, he introduced me to Kirsty MacColl. So I played. In fact, first thing I played for her was brilliant. Was You Just Haven't Earned It Yet, Babies. I was playing a Smith song with Johnny for Kirsty, which was fantastic. And then my relationship with Kirsty was brilliant. Went on for, and then Days, we did Days, her big hit, Kink song.
Electric Landlady and everything. Yep.
Electric Landlady, all that. And but you know, it's such a great title, that.
Yeah, it is brilliant.
Her alternative title choice was Al Green Was My Valet.
She had such brilliant titles, didn't she, with the Elvis and the Chip Shop and everything else? And
the wit on that woman. Yeah,
absolutely.
So it's, you know, we're still, I mean, what's nice is that, you know, my son is now at Manchester Uni, and as often, he's always the first person I call when I go up, and, you know, as often as not, you know, I'll go and see him. He'll come see. He came out to have dinner in a Chinese with me and my boy last time I was up. It's adorable. He's, you know, he's just the nicest man in the world, and he's got that thing. There's only two people I know who are quite like this. I know lots of people still love it, but and I'm not in. This isn't meant to be a diss of any other guitar player, but it just seems particular to both Johnny Marr and Phil Manzanera. Both seem to have this thing that every day, every time they pick up a guitar, it's Christmas morning. They're 10 years old, and they've just been given their first guitar. You know, it's that exciting to them. You know, it's so, and I envy that so much.
Fantastic stuff, lovely stuff. And let's move on to Pink Floyd then. I mean, obviously your connection with them and every pretty much member of the group, you've played with them all solo and everything else. I mean, you're so involved. I mean, you obviously you didn't replace Roger Waters. That's the wrong way of putting it. But you came in afterwards. You can't replace somebody like that. That's not what would happen. No. But did you work with Roger solo stuff before or after the Pink Floyd stuff?
Roger,
yeah.
I've done the thing. Do you know what? Funny enough, is because Pat Leonard produced Roger's next album after I'd done the Floyd. He produced, and which is funny because he co-wrote a song on Momentary Lapse of Reason, the Floyd record. And then he was asked to produce Amused to Death, which he did. And I was actually asked to play on that by Pat. And it was quite funny. And again, it's this thing of being young. I thought, whoa, that'd be hilarious. What a great gag that would be. And I thought, well, obviously, I need to ask David. And so I asked David and said, David, actually, I've been asked to play on Roger's album. Would you be all right with that? He goes, yeah, of course, it's fine. And I just thought about it for a second. I thought, it isn't, is it? It really isn't. It's not. So I didn't. So I turned it down, unlike some people. But I have worked with him I played with him and David at a Palestinian benefit. So, which was, and the funny thing, the idea was, I think one of them just said, I'll do it. But the deal is, we have to play To Know Him Is to Love Him, right? Which is a lovely gag and sounds great on paper. And apparently it's not just that, it's not being obtuse. It's Pink Floyd used to do that as a sound check number. Back in the day, which I would love to. I'd love to hear a recording of Pink Floyd playing To Know Him Is to Love Him. But then, and it was all very funny. It was just going to go, they were going to get up and do it. But then it all got, well, Roger wanted to change the key, and then there's this part, and then I can't sing this part, and then someone needs to do this part, and it's suddenly like, if we can't just get up and do it, it's not funny. Well, if we're going to have to fucking labor over this thing, it's not really a great gag anymore, is it? So, I can't remember if we did it or not, actually. But it was great to do that. And then, of course, Roger came and sang with the Saucerful Secrets. That's in New York. But those were simpler times.
There you go. So is that how you got into Pink Floyd then? That connection with your friend again, like saying, "Come on."
It was, no. I got into Pink. No, it was. I'd first been brought to David's attention because I was playing for Dream Academy, Nick Close's band, and I'd played on some demos, and which I think David then went on and produced, and it's got because Nick Laird Clues, who he now does all the music for Nick Broomfield's movies, and who's still he still hasn't changed. He's still the most irrepressible, enthusiastic, oh God, yes, wow, sort of character, and brilliant, something I envy. Again, and he'd obviously, he played what I'd done on his tracks to David, and David had probably gone, that's all right. And of course, Nick's gone, David thinks you're amazing. He thinks you're incredible. So I'm sure he doesn't. And we supported David on his solo tour at this in Birmingham. And so I met David. And again, Nick's going, David's dying to meet you. He really isn't. And so I was sort of I was stuck with David backstage, and it was just because David's not the chattiest guy in the world. He doesn't. Fantastic on email, though, must be said. Okay. That's his great medium. And we had this excruciating, awful meeting where just no one said anything, and him being the ranking officer got to walk away. And then I just started bumping into him places. I was obviously getting invited to better parties because I just started seeing him out. Also, because unlike other sort of mega rock stars, who all inhabit, you only ever saw at gigs or at really swanky things in Chelsea or in Mayfair, right? That's where they lived. Yep. Okay, all that lot. David and Rick Wright were West 11. They were Ladbroke Grove boys, which is not Notting Hill, not like it is now. But then Notting Hill was the coolest place in London, and it was everywhere up and down. And it was, but you wouldn't find any Claptons or Jaggers up there. So I think that's the thing that suddenly made me think, oh, these guys feel like home, because And so I used to, David used to go to 192, the wine bar we all went to, and so then it was basically he was coming in to play with Bryan Ferry when I was working with Bryan. So I kind of got to know him. I was absolutely terrified of him, but and I think that's how it came. And then then I had this thing of I went on holiday to Thailand, my girlfriend too, and it was one of those ironic things where back in the days where you'd buy bootleg cassettes, right, of things, and I bought a copy of The Wall, which actually only had half the album on it, and I went on this total sort of Gilmour tip when I was on holiday, and I got back, and of course this is back in the days of answer phones.
Yeah.
And when I think about it, I don't think I had one of those remote things where you could get it to play your answers down the phone, but I don't think they worked internationally or something, it's the 80s, mate. And I got back and there's all these messages from David saying, I'm doing this Amnesty International gig with Kate Bush. Do you want to come and play with me? And then hi Guy, I really want you for this gig. I'm gonna come play with you. No. Hi Guy, the gig's tomorrow. And then okay, sorry Guy.
Oh no.
And I got and it was just like, oh no, that was my one chance, and I blew it. So but then really not long after that, in fact I saw it in Q magazine, which was brand new. It had just come out, Q magazine, and there was this thing about them doing an album. I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then I got a call from David out of the blue, and he was in LA, and it was, and this actually set the scene for my relationship with David for the next 40 years. We just said, hello guys, so I don't know if you've seen, but we're putting Pink Floyd back together and going on the road. So I've got two questions really. One, would you be interested, and would you be available? It's 13 months. So I think I could muster some interest, David. Yes, absolutely. And yeah, I'm available. And he went, oh, not working then.
Ouch. Fantastic. And as you said, it was a grueling 13 months by the sound of things.
Yeah, well, it was done like a school year. That's what's sweet about it. Look about in that it was we went over, although it was August, we went over to rehearse in Toronto. And so, yeah, we basically did the Christmas term in America when we came back. And we had 4 weeks at Christmas, just like at school.
Yep.
And then we had the spring term where we went to Australia, New Zealand, Japan, and probably a bit more America. and then it was the Easter holidays. Came home again, and then it was Europe. And then there was
Did someone have problem
with
childcare or something? Did they need to get home to look after the kids? Was that the issue?
I think that was probably like that. Yeah, I don't know. I think it was what these are the days. It was structured around a tax year, I believe. This is back when everyone used to do tax years out. In fact, because what's funny was, I mean, which I would never do, and but what was funny was when I got the gig, top rate tax was 60%. So I was just like, fuck it, I'm not going to make any money anyway. I'm just going to buy some new suits and get smashed, and it'll be great. But then literally just after I got the gig, they cut the top rate tax rate to 40%. It's like, oh, that's nice.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So when you join in a band like Pink Floyd, I mean, they're iconic, they're legendary. I mean, distinct sound. They've got a rich history, an iconic bass player as well in the past with Roger. So how did you approach kind of stepping into the role as the band's kind of bassist at this point then?
I got it all wrong.
Okay.
I got it all wrong in that I was playing all the wrong basses. I was too in my own, it was the 80s. The 80s were about bass players. I was one of those kids, and it was all, playing bass was all about putting your stamp on stuff.
Yeah.
And much as I tried, and it took me a long time to, which I think actually in a lot of cases kind of worked, but it was like, I mean, there's stuff, like I said, things like, although I've had to reappraise a lot of the stuff I hated, I've kind of reappraised with fullness of time, especially during lockdown, when I did this series of YouTube videos, Lockdown Lips. And there was all this stuff that I hated and have been so embarrassed about for years, like the slap break in Brick in the Wall and my bass solo and Money. And it turns out that people are incredibly fond of them and attached to them. So that's actually really, really nice. Which is why when they redid Momentary Lapse of Delicate Sound of Thunder, and my bass solo got taken out of Money. And any time up to a few years ago, I would have been like, oh, thank Christ for that. But now I'm like, no, what'd you do that for? I actually get why you do it, because it just makes the song so long. And, people want to listen to it. Are bass players, and they can find versions of it online. So I'm not really bothered.
Fantastic.
But, because you've got to be honest, that a lot of people are just going to skip through it anyway. Non-bass players are just going to skip through it.
Absolutely. And then we have to mention The Division Bell, another huge album, #1 all over the world. And I think Nick Mason had said in an interview that your playing influenced the mood of that record as well. So tell me about what you remember with the recording and the putting together of that record.
Well, that's not. I don't think that's really the recording of it. I think what Nick's talking about there, and bless him, that's very, very kind of him to say, is I got what was they decided to start the album in the way that Pink Floyd used to start albums when they were sort of still mates, which was, or rather than someone just presenting their work to the band, which was where they just go in the studio and just jam for weeks, and just whatever came out they would then whittle down. And so they decided to go and do that at Britannia Row with just the three of them and me, which was an amazing thing to be asked to go and join in on. And also, but as part of the sort of soap opera that my life with Pink Floyd is that I'd been going out with Gala, Rick's daughter, for a bit, and we'd just been away for our first holiday. Right, we went to Mexico for one of the most magical holidays I've ever had. 3 weeks going around Mayan ruins, backpacking, and so I'd literally just got home from that. And because I lived just around the corner for Rick, I was designated as his driver. So I was driving to and from the studio every day. And I mean, I loved Nick, I adored him, but that things were still quite fresh. And I certainly wasn't going out with Carla for job security. Believe me, that was not helpful. And poor old Rick was getting teased terribly by David and Nick. It's, bands are just, they're kids, they're like school kids when they get together. So there was that element of it. But I actually in that time kind of got very close to Rick, because he was the one who just wanted to be in the room working all the time. and I'd never seen this stuff. They had all this old gear out. I'd never seen Rick's Farfisa or his Benson Echo or his, I'd only seen his kind of super 80s Kurzweil zhuzhy stuff,
Yeah.
And it was great. So to see him, with his old organs and everything was brilliant. And we just used to sit and jam a lot. So yeah, I think quite a lot of grooves came out of that. And come about, I mean, because my natural inclination is to play, and especially then, it all gets better as you get older. Is not necessarily too much, but more than Pink Floyd would like, So
Yeah.
that and so, I mean, often I come up with a line, and David would go, "That's nice, but get rid of that. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. Get rid of that." And then and you know what? He was, he's right. I mean, it's Pink Floyd. They know how it works.
You'd hope so.
Yeah.
And you mentioned, sorry, I was going to say, you mentioned Rick there. I mean, not many people talk about him. He was a quiet man, wasn't he? So what was he like?
He was brilliant. He was also, he was incapable of, I mean, one of the reasons he was incapable of bullshit, just incapable of it. He could only ever speak his truth, and which could be very funny and very awkward sometimes.
I bet.
And he just wanted to be on his boat, and that's where I used to, he'd spent 20 years being bullied by someone, so he was. I mean, that was the lovely thing about that album, was seeing this guy come back to life. Hence the song, which I had a hand in writing, which was nice. And he was always. That's why I used to sail with. I sailed the Atlantic with him.
Oh wow.
He used to do that every year.
Fantastic.
Sail the Atlantic Ocean, yeah. And I always love that. Anyone who sails, I love, because cars are obvious and easy, but sailing is elemental, and it's how the world was found, and it's there's something spiritual about it. So always trust people who sail. And I live my life by that.
There's a T-shirt in there somewhere.
Yeah, there is. And that's why I used to love being with him on his boat, because that's where he was happy, and he was confident and in control and everything. So, but yeah, no, he was a love. I mean, I used to love just him. I mean, one of my sort of most touching memories, and of course, if it was in the days of iPhones, I would have just bloody recorded it, but I didn't. Was when Stanley, our son, was born. We went down to France, his lovely house in France, and he had this piano. There was a piano in the house of France. There was something about it where I remember, whenever we went there, I would walk in the door, I'd sit at that piano, and you'd come up with an idea.
Oh.
Magical. It would make you have an idea. Yeah, there was something about it. And I just remember one time when Stanley was literally, he's just a couple of months old, and Rick sat him on his lap, and Stan's just going, bang, ding, ding, dang, just whacking at the piano in that way that babies do. And Rick just was coming up with chords underneath him, sort of weaving around the sort of, Rick Wright chords around it. And it was just sublime. And and I was thinking, Stan, if you had any idea what was happening right now.
Oh, incredible memories, wonderful stuff. And then just someone else to touch on, Nick Mason. Obviously, you worked with him for many years, but the Saucerful of Secrets stuff, which has been going on for the last, was it maybe 6 or 7 years now? Is it something like that? But
no, it's 5 years. It's 5 years. Yeah, well, not. I mean, annoyingly, we had a 2-year break.
Yeah, of course.
We were, lockdown happened the week before we were starting rehearsals for our next tour. So yeah, that's amazing. So we kind of made up for it last year. Because I've never toured like this before, and Nick certainly hasn't. Like I said, this is the first time he's ever slept on a tour bus. And he loves it, because it's the sort of touring that now, as I used to love, the thing of just hanging around, being in a city for 3 days and just doing. Whereas now, can we just get on with it, So we moved so fast. Like in Europe, we did 60 shows in 90 days in 29 countries.
Wow.
Yeah.
Incredible. A lot of traveling. And then you went across to America, didn't you, as well, last year? And then
5 weeks in America.
Yeah, Pantheon Podcasts, who Vintage Rock Pod are a proud part of as well. And you
Oh,
met a
okay.
lot of people across there, and I know you did a lot of interviews
Yes,
with the different podcasts which are involved. And that
we
American
did.
tour went down an absolute treat. Everyone was saying what a fantastic show it was, and
Yeah.
went so well for you guys.
Yeah, no, it went brilliantly. Although some of the, I mean, because it was the third time that tour had been rebooked, so some of the venues were weird. We seemed to end up in a lot of musical theatres,
Okay.
you know, places that would sort of have Frozen on the rest of the time, rather than, and it's kind of, for us, it was actually the more rock and roll theatres tended to work better. But yeah, no, it was a great tour, and of course, Gary and I still managed to keep our podcast going all the way through all of that. So, which is great, but it's like slightly when you're having, you know, because we research a lot. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's not easy. It's not easy. And just quickly on the Saucerful Secrets, I heard you say in another interview that it's the most fun and fresh thing you've ever done, because you're getting to play the music that Pink Floyd probably didn't even play back then when they recorded it, or haven't done so for 40, 50 years. So it was so nice to go back to that psychedelic stuff and play the stuff that had just been sat for so long on vinyl, basically.
that's the thing, exactly. Where the key thing is, it's not new, but it's fresh.
Yes,
Yeah, it feels really fresh. These songs feel fresh. I think that songs get tired from being played too much. You know, I'm sure comfortably Num's going, oh, can I just have a rest? But and yeah, that's the thing. A lot of it hasn't been played, but also it's because what's lovely is it connects Nick to who he was, that kid that he was, and it connects everyone else to who they were. It connects me to my first band. It connects Gary to him as a kid, you know. So and it has this lovely typical effect, but also yeah, because it's kind of Pink Floyd as a pop group, and it's playful, and a lot of it's light. I mean, a lot of it's still quite dark and intense, but there's also all the different colors, you know. I mean, stuff like uh obscured by clouds, where we go into, you know, and when Nick's laying down this like full-on krautrock groove, and it's, you know, so it's great the places it goes.
Fantastic stuff. And then just to finish off, you mentioned before we started recording that kind of podcasting is your life at the moment, isn't it? And yourself and Gary, Rockonteurs, and it's a
Yeah.
fantastic show. It's brilliant. You interview some of the most incredible guests across the musical world and everything. So fill us in on all that you're doing right now.
Well, we just did our first live event. In fact, our episode this week was our first live one, where because we have this running gag. There are things that keep, for some reason, no matter who we talk, things that always come up are prog. There's always everyone has some sort of prog reference, and with it, people it was either the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show or the Sex Pistols at the Screen on the Green. That's the thing that kicked people off. And Gary was at the Sex Pistols at the Screen on the Green gig, right? And I'm never allowed to forget it. But then, as part of the London Podcast Festival, we got offered the Screen on the Green to do a live event, and so we went and did our first live Rockonteurs with Steve Diggle from the Buzzcocks, who also played that night, and Glenn Matlock from the Sex Pistols. And it was just like the most brilliant kind of. And then, in fact, David Coverdale, who's become the sort of patron saint of the Rockonteurs, who we just adore, he actually recorded a special video intro for us.
Oh, wow.
As well. So, yeah, so that was nice. And hopefully there'll be more of those coming up, live things.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Guy, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you for the last, nearly hour. Thank you so much for your time. It's been wonderful hearing all your stories.
You're very welcome. All the very best to you.